All right, today we're diving into a theory that is so out there, it tries to completely rewrite the history of an entire nation. So I want you to forget everything you might know about Hungarian origins, the stuff about the Ural Mountains. The source we're looking at, called the ancestral connection, argues that the real story starts thousands of years earlier, right in the cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia.
So let's just cut right to the chase. This is the big, bold question at the very heart of our source material. I mean, it's a claim that just completely flies in the face of more than 100 years of linguistic agreement, which, as you know, connects Hungarian to languages like Finnish and Estonian. So what on earth could possibly back up such a massive claim? Well, let's get into it. To really get a handle on this theory, we're going to break it down into the 5 key pillars of its argument. We'll kick things off with the main claim. Then we'll dig into the language and archaeology, and we'll wrap up by looking at why this whole idea is in a major showdown with the academic world.
Okay, so the core argument is actually pretty simple, but it's also staggering. The idea is that the long-accepted Finno-Ugric theory about where Hungarians come from, it's just fundamentally wrong. This text says the real story, the true roots of the language and the people, well, they lie with the ancient Sumerians in Mesopotamia.
So let's dive into what the source claims is its most powerful evidence, its smoking gun, if you will. The deep, structural links, it says, exist between the Sumerian and Hungarian languages. And we're not talking about a distant cousin situation here. The claim is that it's a direct line of descent.
The first piece of evidence they bring up is surprisingly straightforward. The source says you don't even need to be a linguist to see this connection. All you need is to speak Hungarian and look at a map of ancient Mesopotamia. The argument is that the names of major Sumerian cities are instantly understandable.
For example, take the ancient city of Kish. The source points out that in Hungarian, the word kis, that's spelled K-I-S, means small. And this is presented as Exhibit A, a supposed direct, undeniable link that has somehow survived for thousands of years.
And the list just keeps going. The text lays out this whole pattern of these supposed connections. The city of Ur becomes Ur, which means Lord. Lagos becomes Lakash, or dwelling. Uruk is reinterpreted as Urikur, lordly stone. And the source really insists on this point. These are not just random coincidences, they are linguistic fossils.
Okay, now this next point is really interesting because it goes beyond just single words and into a full sentence. The source takes a look at a standard note that scribes would leave after copying a cuneiform tablet. And this is a note that's been found on literally thousands of these artifacts.
And here's the number the source uses to basically seal the deal. It claims that research by Woolley found that out of 56 distinct grammatical features in the Sumerian language, an absolutely mind-boggling 53 of them are still present in modern Hungarian today.
Okay, let's switch gears for a second. The argument now moves away from the abstract world of language and into stuff you can actually see and touch, physical evidence that allegedly connects these two very distant cultures.
So the next claim the text makes is that certain unique animal breeds, which are depicted in ancient Sumerian art, are today known exclusively as Hungarian breeds. We're talking about the iconic Raka sheep with those crazy spiral horns, or dogs like the Kuvas and the Puli. The source presents them as living, breathing proof of a shared heritage.
And this is where the archaeological claims start to get really wild. The argument pivots to these artifacts right here, the Tatarlaka tablets. They were discovered in Transylvania, and the source presents them as a discovery that could potentially change everything we think we know.
Now just follow the chain of events here, according to the source. First, these tablets, with what looks like Sumerian writing, are found. Then, they are supposedly dated as being 1,500 years older than the first known writing from Mesopotamia. The implication there is just explosive, right? It would mean that writing itself began in Europe, not the Middle East. And then, the final claim is that this world-shaking news was just completely buried by the press.
All right, for the last categories of evidence, the source zooms in on the people themselves, looking through the lenses of physical anthropology and the scientific study of folk music.
So to argue against that Finno-Ugric connection, the source draws a really stark physical contrast. It describes Finno-Ugric peoples with what it calls Mongoloid features, while describing Hungarians with European features. And based on this, the text basically asserts that there can be no close ancestral relationship. It's just not possible.
Next up, the argument turns to music. And here, the text brings in the work of the world-renowned Hungarian composer Béla Bartók, who, as it happens, did a ton of research into comparative folk music traditions.
Now this is really interesting.
This slide presents data, allegedly from Bartok's research. It claims there's a massive 75% similarity between Hungarian and Turkish folk music and 42% with Persian music. But then, in dramatic contrast, the similarity with Finnish folk music is claimed to be a mere 2%. So you can see how that would directly undermine the whole Finno-Ugric cultural link.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most controversial part of this whole argument. After laying out all of its evidence, the source shifts its focus to why this theory isn't mainstream, and it frames this as a direct conflict with a hostile academic establishment. The source presents this quote, which it attributes to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, or MTA, as proof of a preemptive, absolute rejection of the theory. It's portrayed not as a scientific disagreement, but as a rigid, institutional brick wall.
And right here, the source weaves all those previous threads together into a single narrative of active suppression. It claims Woolley was denied help, that Bartok's book was made unavailable, that the Tatarlaka discovery was intentionally buried. I mean, the text goes so far as to accuse the Academy itself of anti-Hungarian activity just for upholding the mainstream theory.
And that, right there, is the ultimate conclusion of this source text. It's not just saying the Finno-Ugric theory is an academic mistake. No, it's asserting that the whole thing is a politically motivated lie, created specifically to damage the Hungarian national identity and its historical story.
And so we end right back where we started, with this really profound question that's posed by the source material. It challenges all of us to consider whether this collection of evidence, from language and archaeology all the way to anthropology, is really substantial enough to justify a complete reevaluation of a nation's entire established origin story.